Yes, I think as an educator, to go to a class and be yapped at for 50 minutes is like a slow death. And clearly we have data that passive learning, which is me talking at you or assigning you to read a chapter in a book, there's very low yield from that. So we must immediately follow with active learning activities, which can be pretty easy to pull off. It could be 200 students in a classroom and I'll say turn to your neighbor and discuss this for a couple of minutes. It could be, could you please rewrite in your notes this concept that I just explained? It could be active learning, things like team-based learning, where 4 or 5 students get together and may wrestle with a case or a multiple choice question and defend why the right answer is correct and the wrong answers are incorrect. But taking that knowledge from the passive learning and putting it to work, that's how people learn. That's how adults learn. I'm also a really big fan of metacognition. So whenever I teach a class, whether it's online or a face-to-face class, once a week or every other week, I will have the students write in their reflective journal. And what they have to write in there is not, what did you do this week? I don't want to hear, I read this chapter and then I did these cases. I want them to reflect on what were their impressions from that past week or 2 weeks. For example, I was really surprised about what we did this week. I thought I would love it, and you know what? I didn't like it so much. But more often what I hear is, I really didn't want to do this activity this week. For example, I teach an online course on the principles and practice of education. And I make the students use social media as a form of education. So I make them log on to Facebook in our closed group, and I make them tweet. And they all go screaming and kicking, particularly into the Twitter world. But at the end of the course, they finally say, I can see where this is a valuable educational opportunity. So by having learners do the activity that you're trying to teach, it dramatically increases their retention and their ability to incorporate that learned activity into their practice. There are several models that people can use to design education. The ADDIE model is one that is probably the most popular. So it stands for the 5 steps that people should use in planning education. And what is really kind of scary is most educators, and I would argue that all practitioners are educators, leap into education without any forethought whatsoever, which always tends to miss the mark when you go about doing this. So the ADDIE model speaks to 5 steps: analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. So analysis has 2 important parts. So that's the first step, is determining, is there a lack of knowledge that we could fix with education that would help this performance problem? If you're assured that that is correct, then we move into analyzing the audience. Who's going to be in the audience? Is it going to be mandatory attendance or will it be optional? Are they going to be for me or against me? Maybe they're neutral on the topic. Are they going to have very strong opinions about it? So who is going to be there and why are they there? So that is the analysis. Then you move into the design of the education, and you always begin with the end in mind. So at the end of this training, the learner should be able to do X, Y, Z. So that is the finish line. Then you move backwards. To accomplish the finish line, you have to be able to do this. But to do this, you have to do this. So you have your terminal performance objective, meaning your big objective at the end, and then you can parse it out into smaller and smaller units. Perhaps you're designing an entire curriculum. Maybe you're designing a course. It could be you're just designing a 15-minute presentation, for example, but you can break that down into smaller and smaller pieces. So you write your learning objectives, and they have to be very explicit. I recommend using the ABCD model. Who's the audience? What's the behavior? Under what conditions and to what degree? So for example, the first-year medical student, the audience, should be able to use a multidimensional pain assessment instrument, that's a behavior, within 3 tries using all 8 elements of symptom analysis. So it's very clear to the learner what the expectation is. Then you pick your learning objects. What will you have them do to learn the material? Will they go to a lecture? Will they read a chapter? Will they do an online course? What will they do? You put it all together, and then you certainly roll it out, and then of course you have to evaluate it all along the way. And there are 4 levels of evaluations. A level 1 evaluation is referred to as a smile sheet. Did you like the speaker? Did the speaker accomplish their objectives? Was the room comfortable? Did you like lunch? So those are the smile sheets. A level 2 evaluation is actually giving them a content knowledge assessment. So perhaps you had that as part of your curriculum as well, a level 2 assessment. So what color is the sky? Blue, green, red, or purple? So there is a correct answer. A level 3 evaluation is seeing, do the learners now do things differently because of this education? And most importantly is a level 4 evaluation, which is harder to capture, but are we seeing better outcomes because the learner is doing things differently because they acquired the knowledge based on that educational intervention that we just did?